Warhammer 40K has one of the strangest premises in popular fiction. There are no good guys here. That sounds simple, almost like a slogan for a darker kind of space fantasy, but it is doing more work than people realize. It does not mean every faction is evil in exactly the same way, or that every soldier, alien, commander, priest, rebel, and machine king has the same moral weight.
It means the setting has built a galaxy where survival has eaten virtue, and every major power has learned to call its own cruelty necessary. That is why the question is not really which faction is secretly good. The better question is, what does each faction sacrifice, and what does it tell itself afterward?
The simplest answer is that Warhammer 40K has no good guys because every faction is trapped inside a system that rewards monstrosity. The Imperium of Man survives through fanaticism, slavery, censorship, xenophobia, and war on an unimaginable scale. Chaos claims to offer freedom from that prison, but its freedom usually ends with a mortal soul chained to hungry gods.
The Aeldari are ancient, beautiful, and tragic, but they often treat younger species like pieces on a board they are allowed to spend. The Tau Empire looks cleaner, brighter, and more reasonable, but its greater good still comes with conquest, hierarchy, and the expectation that everyone will fall in line. The Necrons want their lost glory back, and many of them see the living as vermin wandering through stolen tombs. And the Tyranids do not hate you, which is almost worse. They are hunger with starships, a cosmic appetite that turns heroism, politics, and prayer into biomass.
So no, there is no faction you can point to and say, these are the uncomplicated heroes of the galaxy. There are only factions with reasons, factions with victims, and factions with stories they tell themselves so they can keep moving.
The Imperium is the easiest trap because it is human. It has mothers, workers, soldiers, pilgrims, children, and exhausted people who would rather live one quiet day than die for a banner. It has brave defenders who stand against daemons, alien invasions, plague fleets, and horrors that would make ordinary civilization impossible. That is why the Imperium can feel heroic in a single battle. A guardsman holding a trench against monsters is not automatically a villain because the empire behind him is monstrous, but the Imperium as a system is not noble. It is a machine that burns human beings as fuel, then calls the fire holy. Its worlds are ruled by fear, bureaucracy, priesthood, secret police, and hereditary power. Its answer to uncertainty is often execution. Its answer to difference is often extermination. And its answer to reform is usually suspicion.
The tragedy is that the Imperium is sometimes right about the danger and still wrong about what it has become. In 40K, the galaxy really is full of threats that can corrupt a thought, swallow a planet, or turn mercy into an opening. But that does not absolve the Imperium.
It makes the horror sharper because you can understand why people cling to it while still seeing the nightmare they are clinging to. The Imperium is not good because it protects humanity. It is tragic because it protects humanity by destroying so much of what would make humanity worth protecting.
Chaos is the other trap, because it often begins with a true accusation. The Imperium is cruel, hypocritical, stagnant, and afraid. Its saints demand obedience, its lords hoard power, and its temples tell suffering people that pain is proof of faith. So when chaos whispers that the throne is a lie, that the chains are real, and that the universe has deeper powers than imperial sermons admit, it is not always starting with nonsense. The lie comes later. Chaos tells you that breaking the cage means becoming yourself.
Then it slowly replaces the self with appetite. Corn can make rage feel honest. Nurgle can make surrender feel merciful.
Tzeentch can make ambition feel like enlightenment. Slaanesh can make sensation feel like truth. Each path offers a kind of answer to pain, but the price is that the answer keeps eating. Chaos is not a heroic rebellion against tyranny. It is a rebellion that discovers a deeper tyranny and kneels anyway, because the chains are painted in colors the rebel recognizes as desire. That is what makes chaos compelling.
It exposes the sickness of the Imperium, but it does not cure it.
it turns the wound into a mouth. The Aeldari are one of the best examples of why suffering does not automatically create virtue. They are a dying people carrying the memory of a catastrophe so vast that it reshaped the galaxy and birthed a god of excess. Their craft worlds are not just homes. They are lifeboats drifting through the consequences of an ancient civilization's ruin. That makes them sympathetic. It also makes them dangerous. Many Aeldari do not look at humanity and see equals. They see a loud, short-lived, dangerously ignorant species stomping through a galaxy it barely understands. From their perspective, sacrificing a human world to save an Aeldari craft world can look like mathematics, not murder. That is the moral chill of the Aeldari. They can be graceful, wise, and genuinely protective of their own people, while also treating other lives as acceptable losses in a prophecy only they can read. Even their tragedy can become a permission structure. They have suffered, so they act as if their survival has a higher claim than yours. In a brighter universe, ancient wisdom might mean compassion. In Warhammer 40K, ancient wisdom often means being very good at choosing who else pays for your mistakes. The Tau are controversial because they look like an escape hatch from the setting. They have cleaner cities, better public ideals, advanced technology, and a message that sounds almost sane next to imperial sermons and demonic screaming. The greater good promises cooperation instead of endless hatred. For many humans living under awful imperial conditions, that promise would not sound like villainy. It would sound like food, medicine, and a future. That is exactly why the Tau matter. They show that even the most hopeful-looking empire in 40K is still an empire. The Tau expand, they absorb. They classify other peoples by usefulness, manage dissent, and place everyone inside a hierarchy that claims to know what is best for them. Their darkness is not always skulls and screaming. Sometimes it is a clean room, a calm voice, and a system that smiles while removing your right to say no. The Tau are not simply as bad as chaos or as grotesque as the Imperium. That would flatten what makes them interesting. They are morally different and often less nightmarish on the surface, but the setting still refuses to make them pure. The greater good asks a dangerous question. If an empire gives you a better life, when do you notice that it still owns the shape of that life? The Necrons add another kind of moral horror, the horror of entitlement. They are not just robots with green light and ancient weapons. They are the remains of dynasties that once fought gods, shattered star powers, and lost their bodies in the process. Some Necron rulers are tragic. Some are eccentric, wounded, or almost noble in their own terrible way, but their basic claim to the galaxy is often terrifyingly simple. They were here before you, therefore you are the trespasser. That kind of thinking can make genocide feel like restoration. A living world becomes an infestation on a tomb. A civilization becomes dust on a royal floor. The Necrons are frightening because they can make conquest sound like property law. They are not trying to build a shared future. Many of them are trying to resurrect the dead past, and they do not particularly care how many living beings must be cleared away to make room for it. Their tragedy is real, but it is the tragedy of a people who lost themselves and now expect everyone else to pay the debt. Then there are the Tyranids, who almost break the moral conversation. They are not hypocrites. They are not fascists, fallen angels, grieving nobles, or smiling imperialists. They do not need a scripture, a caste system, an ancestral claim, or a philosophy of liberation. They arrive, they consume, and they move on. That makes them less evil in the ordinary sense and more terrifying in the cosmic sense. You cannot meaningfully accuse a swarm of betrayal. You cannot shame it with the suffering of its victims. You cannot debate it into mercy. The Tyranids are what happens when the galaxy stops being political and becomes ecological. They reduce every argument to appetite. That matters because it shows the edge of 40K's moral universe. Some enemies are evil because they choose domination. Others are horrific because choice barely seems to apply. Against the Tyranids, the Imperium can look heroic. The Aeldari can look desperate.
and even ancient enemies can look suddenly understandable.
But that does not make them good. It only proves that a worse threat can make a bad regime look necessary for one terrible afternoon.
The point of no good guys is not that morality does not exist in Warhammer 40K. If anything, the setting depends on morality. It keeps showing you courage, loyalty, sacrifice, mercy, and friendship, then placing those virtues inside institutions that twist them.
A Space Marine can save a city and still serve an empire that would burn another city for disobedience. A Chaos Rebel can begin with a justified grievance and end as a butcher. An Aeldari Seer can prevent one apocalypse by arranging someone else's.
A Tau commander can genuinely believe in peace while expanding the machine that defines peace for everyone else. That is why the setting lasts. It does not ask you to stop judging. It asks you to keep judging even when every answer is contaminated. The grimdark part is not just that everyone is bad. The grimdark part is that people still do brave, moving, meaningful things, and the galaxy still turns those things into ammunition.
So why are there no good guys in Warhammer 40K? Because the setting is built around civilizations that have confused survival with righteousness. The Imperium survives and calls brutality faith.
Chaos rebels and call slavery freedom. The Aeldari endure and call manipulation wisdom. The Tau expand and call obedience harmony. The Necrons reclaim and call extermination restoration. The Tyranids devour and do not bother calling it anything at all. But that does not mean there are no good moments, no good people, or no choices that matter.
In fact, those small moments matter more because they happen in a galaxy designed to crush them. The lack of good guys is not a reason to stop caring. It is the reason the setting keeps asking what care costs when no banner is clean.
Thank you for joining Lore Heretic in the archives tonight. If this little expedition into grimdark lore earned its candlelight, subscribe, pull up a chair, and I will see you in the next one.